know it's this. It's like a perk and a talking and see. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up and better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Deku Helps His Best Friend, Peter Parker. Smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. They had lost. After saving the wizard from the alien, shooting said alien out of the space donut, and joining Mr. Stark and Doctor Strange to some planet, and meeting a ragtag group of people with weird abilities. They banded together to fight Thanos, the Mad Titan, the last of his kind, wielder of the Infinity Stones. Peter Parker was just going to school in the bus that day. Now he saw his new comrades fade away one after the other, and it's coming. He can sense it yet. He can't avoid it. No matter how hard he struggles, he too will fade. Peter felt sick, wanting to vomit. His heart was clenched as he staggered amongst the debris towards Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good, he uttered. He saw the look of pure despair and horror in Mr. Stark's face as he stumbled towards him. You're all right, Tony said as calmly as possible, hugging him as tight as possible. I don't know what's happening. I know he fell into his chest, hearing Tony wince, but he hugged him as tight as he could, and Peter couldn't control it. He felt its many pinpricks, and he wept. This was different when he was young and he lost his parents. This was different when he got bit and then lost Uncle Ben and did nothing. The ones close to him had died, and he was going to join them. Save me, save me. I don't want to go, sir, please, please, I don't want to go, he sobbed, and he felt his legs get weak as Tony lied him down. The older man, the Iron Man, leader of the Avengers and his hero, his idol, bloodied and bruised and broken after fighting that monster, was shedding tears too. Peter took a deep breath, looking back up at him. He couldn't feel his shoulder blades, or his feet. He saw the loss in Tony's eyes, the despair and sheer horror of he was witnessing. He saw himself, back when he was cradling Uncle Benjamin Parker, and ... it gave him some semblance of peace. Was this how Uncle Ben felt when he was passing away, losing a loved one in his arms? Now it has come full circle. Aunt Me, Ned, Michelle, Mr. Stark, I'm sorry. He exhaled one last time, and felt his entire body go numb, and darkness took him. It was cool and dark there, and then there was light. Peter Parker breathed there, sitting up and panting. It felt as if he was underwater for the longest time, chest rising and falling as he looked around, his sight blurry as he tried to adjust to the environment around him. Mr. Stark. He tried to sit up, feeling nothing but pavement as he stumbled and fell on his knees. He gasped, looking at his hands, then down at his body, still covered in the nanomachine-powered iron spider suit. He looked back and forth, head on a swivel. This wasn't the orange-tinted alien world, one of ruined ships and buildings and potholes. It had a blue sky, buildings, the sounds of the hustle and bustle of the suburbs. He looked over the edge, realizing he was on top of a skyscraper. He stumbled backward, gripping and releasing his fists as he looked down at his hands. Just ... what was going on? Peter can see billboards in the distance that had unique Asian words, the likes of which you only see in Chinatown or Little Tokyo. And some English. Where am I? Didn't I die? He asked, remembering how death crawled all over him and yet he could not escape. Peter tapped his wrist, trying to draw up some communicator. He got his helmet back on, however, the nanomachine sliding over his face as he looked through the heads-up display. Energy levels equals normal. Communications equals no connection. No connection. But he was cut off by the sound of sirens and of explosions, making him perk up and look in the distance. Some giant man-shark big nose thingy causing a rampage. He was bigger than a 3-story building. Peter didn't know what was going on, didn't know where he was, but people were in trouble. He saw train tracks leading to commotion. This was a neighborhood after all. He will ask questions. Time to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Peter began slinging towards the giant shark man, which is a good thing because it means his web shooters still work. Other good things, people were happy to see him. They shout and wave at him as he soars over them. One boy looks up, mouth hanging open as Peter waves down to him. They were speaking in foreign tongue. Another tug on his webs, a flip for the audience, and he lands in his crouch atop a power line. Good news, people are cheering for him showing up. Bad news, shark giant sees him. No time to think on how he got here, when this guy is running amok. Hey big guy, I know everyone likes to see Shamu, but you're taking the cosplay a little too seriously. Shark Man blinks, only to grit his teeth and swipe at the tower. His hand tears through the metal, sending it over the edge of the bridge. Oh geez, Peter screams. He fires out a line of web, catching it, but man, this thing is heavy. A crash, and suddenly there's no weight. Peter glances over and there's someone under that huge spire. A guy that could give the Incredible Hulk a run for his money for muscles and has a really pronounced jawline. He's struggling to keep the tower off ground, but he looks up at Peter. There's surprise, and Peter feels the need to be anywhere but here. He dives to the side, just as the shark man's hand smashes where he once was, flipping onto his outstretched arm. Peter runs up his arm even as the shark giant tries to swat him off. His hit goes wide as Peter dodges by inches. Hey, you know you're standing on a train track. People use these to get to work, you know, Peter says, getting close enough to crack his foot against the shark's snot. He stumbles, but catches himself and stares at Peter with rage in his eyes. Si Hanatagaru Bagunoyani Watsubi. I have no clue what that means, but I'm pretty sure it's nothing nice. Peter spoke to himself, then he saw Asian words lace out on screen and then transform into English. Translation of classical kanji, I'll crush you like the bug you are. Huh? The suit has a translator, that's neat. Shark giant swings, only to roar in frustration as Peter dodges yet again. However, his attention is soon drawn by someone that looks like he's made of wood. He reaches out and did his arms just turn into tree branches, and they're wrapping around Shark Giant's arm. Peter landed beside the dark spandex-covered woodman, amazed. Are you made of wood? That's awesome. Peter gushes. The wood guy stares at him. Kitsudo. Translation, a kid, while more of a teenager. A face full of shark man fist cuts Peter off, a long and loud drawn-out ealllyy sounding out. Weightlessness and dizziness fill Peter, and on reflex, he throws out 2 lines of webbing to slow himself down. They connect, and Peter gets way too close to the crowd of people that he'd like. Most move away, but one kid stares at him with stars in his eyes, a plain face with freckles and a mop of untidy green hair. Hey man, bye man, Peter yells, pulling against the webbing and launching him right back into the thick of it. His flight is perfect. The shark guy is too focused on Woodman. Oh, this is going to be so Canyon Cannon. And a massive beige leg, or rather an even bigger giant appeared, striking the shark giant and sending him flying. But Peter couldn't stop his flight towards, so like a fly on a windshield, Peter slammed into a rear the size of his room. Good news, not the worst hit, since it was soft, nor did the following fall back down to the ground hurt that badly, with his head hitting the pavement. The iron spider suit protected the worst, but the sense of exhaustion from his fight on Titan combined with a concussion was taking him into a nap. Bad news, when Peter shakes the stars out of his eyes, Muscle Jaw Man, the wood guy and the biggest woman he's ever seen are staring down at him. Ew. Hi, he waved, before closing his eyes as he heard the sounds of sirens. You know what sucks? Waking up after a fight. Don't get it twisted, waking up after a fight is a great thing. It's the biggest sign that you got out of the fight, a literal wake-up call. However, everything sucks. Your entire body aches, somewhere every part of you hurts to move, you want to eat or drink, the list goes on. Why couldn't you wake up nice and comfy after a fight? Is that too much to ask? You put your butt through the tough stuff to get here. Would it be so hard to wake up all nice and cozy? You know, get something out of getting your butt kicked. Unfortunately, even with Mr. Stark's awesome suit, waking up still sucks. Ugh, Mr. Stark, your suit's not that comfy to sleep in. Wait, Mr. Stark. Space. Aliens. Thanos. Shamu. Big butt. Feeling the numbness all over him as death sweeps over him and reduces him to. Peter gasped and jumped up, latching to the ceiling before he could stop himself. Out of ceilings he's crawled on, wasn't that bad. Clean but pretty bland. Not very fair, most cells don't really go all out with the color anyway. Wait a minute, cell. Peter looked around, his suit's visors picking up on every detail that came his way. Sure enough, he's in a jail cell. 1 plank for a bed, 1 toilet, 1 big light but no window and no bars. Aren't those important? Either way, Peter falls from the ceiling. He needed to find someone. There are too many questions going through his head. First and foremost, why is he not dead? Wait, no, bad question for now. Better question, when was there so many superheroes? Did the Avengers have a recruitment drive while he was in space? And where the heck is he? Why were there giants and wood people now? Sure, there was the alien lady with antenna and Drax looking all clay-like, but this was even stranger. He walked forward, only to bounce straight off. Shaking off the hit, Peter blinked and held out a hand. He took a step forward, and his hand hit something solid. Invisible walls. There's a sound of footsteps and Peter sees the creepiest mime ever. He's in a police uniform. Why? Hello? He asked, waving his hand. The mime tilts his head in confusion. By Hawkeye Kaidamesuka comes a voice. Translating, is he awake? Another police officer, this one looking like a normal person, walks in with black hair and Asian features and a scowl. Peter blinks. Oh yeah, I just got up, he says, rubbing his shoulders. Hello there, officer. I just want to let you know that I didn't do anything wrong. I helped with saving some civilians from that monster guy earlier. Not that I'm telling you guys how to your jobs. Keep up the good work. Thank you for your service and all that you. Police. The officer's face scrunches in confusion, and the mime hasn't moved from his position. Anata hakornodoru kawo shunai ru ramashitaka, he asks his partner. Translating, you getting any of this? The mime shakes his head. Oh crap, they don't understand him. How are they going to talk? How is he going to get back to New York? Wait, they're bringing out a phone. Officer nods at mime guy and suddenly, Peter can't hear anymore. Did they just ghost him? That's just mean. Okay, not cool ghosting me like that, Peter shouted, sitting on the edge of the bed with crossed arms. He looked around the walls of his cell. He could maybe punch his way out, or utilize the iron spider's legs to chip his way out, but he has a lot of respect for the police. He doesn't want to cause any trouble, not when he can just contact Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark. Peter let out a sigh and his shoulders slumped, looking at the floor. He had to get information. Or was this all just some crazy dream and he droned out on the bus? Maybe that's it. All he has to do is wait for Ned to wake him up. Oh well, no point complaining about it. Officer Man looked to be in a heated conversation over the phone. With his back turned, Peter didn't have a clue what he was saying. Could this suit read lips? Peter shook his head. This was one of Mr. Stark's suits. Of course it could read lips. Right? The officer puts away the phone and turns enough for Peter to see him gulp. Then immediately he stands at attention, the mime right behind him following. A second later, a new officer in a much nicer uniform comes in. He stands there, tux and all, with short faded red hair and mismatched eyes. One red, one black. He glances a red eye back at mime, whose hands go on a machine gun pace while the other officer grabs a chair from the left. Tux man sits down and straightens his tie, running a hand through his hair. Hello. Peter blinked. You can speak English? A little bit, he responded, his accent thick but coherent. Oh thank God, you have no idea how long I thought I was going to have to read subtitles in my suit. Makes everything really distracting cause like people are talking but stuff is happening, so what do I focus on, the words or the action? It gets really confusing, man. So, thanks, Peter said, springing up. He just has to keep on talking, and he'll wake up. The tux man took the entire breathless ramble in stride, albeit with a quirked eyebrow. I'm sure it is. Now, I am Police Chief Botan Fukuda, I run this precinct. Oh nice to meet you, sir, Peter said with a nod. I'm Spiderman. Botan raised an eyebrow. Bit early to give yourself a hero name, isn't it? Vigilante. Isn't naming yourself like the first thing that you do? I mean, I can't give my real name and all because identities and all. Botan looked more confused. Young man, I believe you are mistaken. And his eyes narrowed, making Peter nervous. It's illegal to use your quirk without a hero license. We ran your face through the database. No license for anyone matching your description or your costume. We even tried to remove it, but it would not budge. Oh, ooh. Peter then felt the nanomachine slink back over his face, giving him a clear view of a suddenly surprised Botan and his two other officers. How about that? You can control your costume. I guess Mr. Stark made this and he can explain everything. Just contact Tony Stark and one at a time, young man. Botan snapped. It made Peter pause. That's disheartening. Peter thought that after that fiasco during homecoming would get his name at least out there. More importantly though, a quirk. Powers, Botan clarified, as if it was the most common thing in the world. Did you hit your head too hard when you hit the pavement? Oh, the young man from Queens paused. So, why does everyone have superpowers? Bai Hatu Wokyang Kukuida, said the officer behind him. Peter perked up. What did he say? Botan rubbed the bridge of his nose. Nothing. You're an American teenage boy. Here in Japan, and yet you know not even a hint of our language. He asked, annoyed. Peter bit his lip, blushing. Well, this is all a dream anyway, so. Yeah. Peter shrugged. The red-haired man let out a sigh. Now, I don't want to do this to someone who helped keep damage to a minimum, as the media happen to like your little stunt in assisting the local heroes, and I would like to get by without being crucified in the tabloids. But the laws are here for a reason and you committed a crime. What did I do wrong? Peter asked. Somi, helping people is a crime. You used your quirk without a hero license. Is there a guardian that we can call? There's a lot of paperwork that'll go a lot faster if we contact your parents. Peter paused, then he sat up. Just contact Tony Stark. You know, Iron Man. Botton's eyebrow rose. Iron Man. What? Yeah, the Iron Man. Leader of the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes. Tabun by Ha Bing Yuanizing Kubikaidsu. The normal officer behind the police chief stated, and Peter was becoming frustrated. I know many heroes, but I have never heard of this Iron Man. CEO of Stark Industries, the biggest tech company on the planet. Who doesn't know him? Calm down. Botton snapped. Listen, we know nothing of this Stark Industries or even this Tony Stark. He looked back at the policeman and muttered, Memo Zhang Shai Kudesai. The officer handed him a notepad and a pen, and he sat back, ready to write. Now, tell me, what is your name? I am Spid. Your normal name, Botton growled, not wanting to stutter as Peter bit his lip, gripping onto the bed sheet. He let out a sigh. If you're worried about your identity, don't be. Botton taps the badge on his lapel. I swore an oath when I put on this badge. Nothing is leaving this room unless you want it to. Young man, his eyes softened. I only want to help you, but I can only do so if you answer my questions. Do you understand? Peter sighed in relief and bit his lip. Okay, my name is Peter Parker. It felt like toxin coming out of his mouth, saying those words while in the iron spider suit under these circumstances. Now he'll never have a chance to be a hero again if he ever went back home. Age, 16. Botton began writing. Place of birth, Queens, New York. Wait, did everyone turn to dust? Peter shouted, standing up, frantic. What are you talking about? Botton asked. Thanos he won and he left and everyone was turning to dust and Peter hugged himself, breathing hard as his mind got to work. He was not on Titan or even back in New York. He was in some town in Japan with some mime police guy, and there's giants and wood people walking around. They talk of quirks and hero licenses as if they treat heroing as simple as driving a car. They don't know of Mr. Stark or the Avengers. What in the hell is happening right now? Mr. Parker, Botton's voice cut through. What do you mean about people turning to dust? That's right, he turned to dust too. He couldn't escape whatever Thanos did. He died. He literally died. He died and just woke up in some new place. Peter's voice came out and it sounded weak, almost like a sob. Can I just write down my contacts and see if you can talk to them? The police chief was incredulous, but upon seeing Peter's visage, it softened. The swelling of tears, the teenage enthusiasm crumbling before him, it was a tidal wave of emotion. He snapped his fingers, and the mime made more hand gestures. The fellow officer had a hand on his gun as the police chief walked over to the sullen Peter and handed him the notepad and pen. Write them down, then we can try our best to contact them. Please let this be some dream. Can you pinch me too? Peter asked as he began writing, looking up at him. Mr. Parker, do it. Peter snapped. Anywhere. Just wake me. Botton flicked Peter's forehead, and Peter felt the little inconvenience. But he felt it. He did not wake up. All of that happened. The aliens, Doctor Strange, the space donut, helping Mr. Stark save the wizard, going to Titan, meeting the Guardians of the Galaxy, fighting Thanos, and losing as he was reduced to ash. It was real. He resumed writing, even with Botton looming over him. Peter finished handing him the contacts list. Please just let him be back home and something weird happened. That's all he asks. Botton took the notepad and walked to the door. We will get to work on these, see if we can contact your guardian or parents. He snapped his finger, and the mime made more hand gestures. He turned to the officer. Bai Naishibi Wu Wamoreu. Hi, and the officer departed as Peter turned around, lying on his bed. We will do our best, Mr. Parker, Botton said. I promise. And he left the cell and walked down the hall, leaving Peter to his thoughts. This has to be a dream. It has to be. Peter hugged the pillow and brought it against his face. Please wake up. Please wake up. Okay then, Fukuda. Botton muttered as he left the cell ward and stared out to officers Fujiwara Tashio and Kimihito-sei as they sat in the general working area of the Musutafu Police Department. Other officers were at work and busy at their terminals as the police chief rubbed the bridge of his nose. This is something else. You ask me, Chief, Tashio snarked. Think the foreigner's lying, giving us croc tears. Say, the mime looked at his partner with an incredulous look. I'm serious. We get kids all the time about this, and he seemed genuinely confused when I told him even basic level information. Quirks, not knowing of quirk regulations, which is enforced even in the United States. This keeps adding up more and more. Explain his costume then. Must be his quirk, right? We couldn't even take it off. And you saw how it slid down his face like sand. Tashio elaborated in exaggerated detail. It has be. I don't know, something tells me this kid either hit his head too hard on the pavement when he confronted that villain, or something is definitely amiss. Botton murmured, cupping his chin. Hey Hanazawa-kun, Yes, sir, asked a young mousy-looking intern with glasses, coming up. She even had big mouse ears on her head. Mind running these contacts over to the US Embassy? These are the contacts our vigilante gave us. He handed him the notepad Parker had written down. Then Hanazawa scurried off. It may be a long shot, and not worth the effort yet. It wouldn't hurt to do his due diligence. And beside that, the web slinging, that costume of his and how it moved. How it prevented little if any injury on his person when they picked him up and put him through the scanner in the ambulance en route to the station. The camera feeds of his acrobats and body strength. The head had symptoms of concussion at first, but when they arrived, there was no more. As if he had healed subconsciously. No one should have more than one quirk. Regeneration, control over some substance that makes up his costume, which even translated for him apparently that it picked up on what Toshio was saying. I'm gonna make a call to an old friend. You go and make sure that. Finally, there you are, said a female voice, making the three law enforcers turn their heads, and walking towards them was none other than Takeyama Yu, the new heroine who has debuted in their region within the last week plus by the moniker of Mount Lady. Right behind the spandex-covered blonde was the dark spandex and wood-armed Nishia Shinji, also known as Kamui Woods. I was looking for your Chief Fukuda. The woman elaborated as some officers made way for her. I wasn't getting any response that my report was filed in, so here it is in person. Mount Lady, welcome. Lawton stood at attention as the statuesque rookie handed him a file. He opened it, glimpsing through. Odd how our response team hasn't gotten back to your firm. Was it anything on our end? Has to be. Our internet's going along fine, Mount Lady stated with a wave of her hand. Kamui here at least is able to do a good job in making sure our bandwidth and net are running. Right? Yes, I'm glad, Kamui remarked with a roll of his eyes. Botan saw the camera footage of the incident, with the villain being detained and under anesthesia as not to transform into a giant again. Kamui Woods was doing a good job keeping the villain under wraps, and then Parker showed up and made some clear rookie mistakes before he slung back into the fray and annoying the villain, right into Mount Lady who took the credit. So, that creep detained? She asked, hand on her hip. Which one, the villain or the one who flew into your ass? Toshio snarked. Kamui Woods sniggered, making the woman fume. I meant the villain. Besides, I saw the social media feeds. Kid was flying in before I, and she emphasized that I took down that monster with an almighty kick. You were late to the scene, Kamui Woods remarked. What took you, especially with your first giant villain encounter? Excuse me, I had to find an open enough area to get a running start for my cannon attack. She barked back. Besides, no harm done. No one was hurt after all, right? Except millions of yen in collateral damage due to the villain and your footsteps messing up the train tracks, Botan remarked, making Mount Lady blanch up. But rest assured, the public transit and the government will repair it. They made sure the tracks were insured, and the villain is under wraps. He'll try within the week and we will need your report to assist the prosecutor's office in throwing him in jail. That's all well and good, Mount Lady stated with a sigh. How about the kid? He seems like a newcomer. She looked back at the shorter Kamui who shrugged. I talked to the other neighboring firms and agencies. No one matches his costume description of a dark blue and red with gold trim and a spider on their chest on their roster, so he's a vigilante. He elaborated. I take it he will be let go with a warning. He sounded like a teenager and a foreigner to boot given his English. American maybe. That's the thing. Botan crossed his arms. It's a complex story, but you hit the nails on the head, Mr. Woods. The police chief gestured for an intern to come by and he handed her the file. Our vigilante is indeed American and a teenager with unique circumstances. See, he told them everything, from Parker's lack of quirk knowledge to his saying of Avengers, Earth's greatest heroes and other oddball terms Parker relayed to him. Both Kamui and Mount Lady had wide eyes. He did hit his head on the pavement. Concussion, Kamui mused. The paramedics had him under their scanners while they treated him. Couldn't get through his costume no matter how hard they tried. Plus, he seemed to have healed, despite showing signs at first. One man with strength, web flinging, and self-healing quirk. That's impossible. It's his costume, Mr. Woods, Toshio answered. If I had to guess, it did it for him. We got a visual when he was able to make it disappear. How strange. Kamui cupped the chin of his wooden mask. Mount Lady quirked her eyebrow. You guys haven't called his parents yet, if he is a teenager. We're running by them now. Chief Fukuda. It was Hanazawa, making Toshio raise his eyes. That was fast. Yes, I'm back. We ran by the names our vigilante gave us. Here is the report the US Embassy gave us. Kamui crossed his arms. So your servers are running fine. It's on our end then. Apologies. He pinched the bridge of his mask as Mount Lady giggled. Shoulda paid the bill, Kamui. Gotta keep an eye on things like bills. And the prize. Oh, shut up, glory hog. No searches, Botan muttered, breaking the two's potential argument as they looked at him. Toshio and Sei looked over his shoulder. That's impossible. Embassy has to be screwing ... with us. Toshio's skepticism faded as he saw the papers handed back from the embassy via email. Nee Parker, residence, Queens, New York. Married to Benjamin Parker. No results found in Japan or United States. Edward Ned Leeds. Residence, Queens, New York. Son of Leonard and Belle Leeds. No results found in Japan or United States. Michelle M.J. Jones. Residence, Queens, New York. Daughter of Brock and Mary Jones. No results found in Japan or United States. Anthony Tony Stark. Residence, Malibu, California and Manhattan, New York. Founder of Stark Industries and the Avengers. Superhero, Iron Man. No results found in Japan or United States. The embassy's database is tied directly to the US government's as well as ours. Botan murmured, biting his lip. The database would have ran by all the words Parker had written down to find any commonality or connection. The fact that nothing came up was incredible. He's lying, Toshio stated. He's not lying till I say so. Botan growled. I'm gonna make a call to an old friend, see if he can help us clear the air here. He doesn't even have a visa, so he's here in this country illegally, with no guardian or parents to speak of. He took a deep breath. So Peter is either an incredible liar, or there's something going on here. You gonna stick around? He asked towards the two pro heroes as he got his phone out. I need to get back on patrol. Takeyama, you stay here and monitor the situation regarding our vigilante. Who? Mount Lady whined. Why not? I can go out on patrol too. I'll call you if we are in dire need, but I need someone who can edit our report to file in at this station. I'm not leaving this vigilante matter untouched, and I want someone here to write it down to show that we did handle this situation and know the full extent of what happened to all parties. Kamui Wood stated as he turned around. And consider this a little lesson before you go glory hunting. I didn't recruit you to my firm to put in a bad reputation of collateral damage. He walked around, and Mount Lady crossed her arms and fumed. You can wait in the break room if you like. You're welcome to explore around the station. Botan said as the phone rang a few more times. TCH, Mount Lady scoffed. Whatever, I was planning on going on my lunch break anyway. I'll check up on that vigilante kid when I can and grab a bite. And I was hoping to get some Waha grill too, not some cafeteria. Botan droned her sulking as he saw the pro walk down to the cell ward as he heard his phone click. This better be good Fukuda, and not some boring purse snatcher, growled an old cranky voice. Sir, are you calling that guy? Toshio asked. Botan nodded, and made a hand gesture to tell the skeptic to shut up. Hello Hayu-sensei. I have a unique case for you I want you to examine for us. Get on with it. American foreign teenager with the possibility of multiple quirks or just his costume. Claiming he knows nothing of quirks or laws of our country, and has no sign of parentage or guardianship. Botan elaborated. There was silence on the other end of the line. You're serious? Hayu asked, with a raised eye going by the end of the line. Why would I lie? Silence again. I'll be there in 10 minutes. This sounds a modicum better than the rest of your rabble. Hopefully it's worth it. Thank you. We will be expecting you shortly. Botan hung up and looked at Toshio. Go to the mail room and get lots of paper and pens. You too, Sei. Sei gave a salute and trotted to the mail room. How much? Toshio asked with a raised eye. Lots. It was as she feared. The cafeteria had no variety. With a heavy sigh, Takeyama took her sandwich and dropped into the closest empty chair in the mess hall. Biting into her food like it insulted her, she let herself frown at the news as images of Shinji appeared on screen as he went on patrol. That should be her out there. Shinji might have his fanbase, but she brought all the money shots to the agency thanks to the paparazzi. More attention will be on her in the firm as a result. Munching on admittedly good roast beef, she shook her head. There was so much more to think about other than food or fame. Should she apologize to Shinji? Maybe he'll let this one go. It was her debut after all. Nah, too much work. Besides, she had to make a huge impression. She has to become an iconic, marketable, and impressionable pro after all. Any word out there is a good word in her book, especially making an impression on the poor lonely male demographic, both young and old. It's not her fault that she was late. Did he have any idea how many places she could transform safety, even with scouting around the Musutafu ward? Then, she should know, she counted all of them. Sure, those are only the constantly empty parts being alone the train tracks, but who knows when the next villain is going to go running through the street and run amok. But the one thing on her mind was the spider kid who collided with her backside after her special crafted hero move Cannon. And he had a nasty fall too, enough for him to make the assumption that he knew nothing of quirks. She shook her head. Where did they come from? Well, now that she thought about it, why did he do it? Sure, the chief said he didn't know anything about quirks, which is frankly ridiculous from an objective standpoint. Anyone who didn't know about quirks was either living under a rock or crazy. But then where did he get his suit? Enough so that he suffered no damage. Where did he learn to control his quirk? To fling around, enhance spider silk and have those acrobatic feats. He had to head train those hard in overtime. Couldn't just roll out of bed and do that. You groaned. This is too much thinking. There has to be a simple explanation for this. Maybe he's a kid that got caught up in some dastardly plot to undermine the very institutions that she fought for. Maybe he was a secret alien. Or maybe he's just some scared kid who doesn't know where he is, yet took the time anyway to help, even if it meant breaking the law. Yu's train of thought came to a screeching halt. That's not impossible. Despite how hard they work, heroes were only human despite how some quirks can change appearances. They couldn't be everywhere at once, and accidents happened. A kid left without their parents due to quirk activity, it's not impossible. A foreign kid is certainly in that realm of possibility. And it didn't have to be villains. It can be anyone. Sometimes, quirks didn't show up at the best of times, even with parental guidance. She was living proof after all. She gripped her arm, the food in front of her looking less appetizing by the second. A scream snapped you out of her thoughts. Down the hall an intern ran, with stacks of paper up to their chins as they almost tripped before catching themselves. Who in the world needs that much paper? Araki Hayu, the dream drawer. No two words brought more dread into the eyes of an experienced office other than paperwork time or new villain. The man was a legend for those that had the honor of serving with him. His quirk turned what could have been baseless leads into solid convictions. He had to have around-the-clock protection from crime rings and villains aiming not to get exposed. And then All Might came onto the scene, and few people had to come to him anymore, as All Might had an accurate nose for trouble. Plus Araki wanted less time in the spotlight. His work can draw the eyes of those of unsavory background. When everyone was scratching their heads trying to figure out a case, he would walk in and solve the entire thing in an hour. All they needed was the suspect, and he alone would give the proof whether they were guilty or innocent or complicit. Every officer in the Musutafu Police Department looked at his plaque every time that they walked into work every morning, though few of them knew what it entailed, or cared, given the scowl Araki always gave from said plaque. After all, the former detective has been happily retired since All Might's debut. He took his experiences and life stories of the many cases he helped crack or save those who were persecuted unfairly and took that with him into becoming a mangaka. Botan had read some when his son had found out about his former mentor in Seinen Leap. He really should tell his wife to be more observant of his son reads. That magazine can get a bit racy and violent. But every police department has had Araki on call so many times that it drove most of them into the red more times than any of their accountants. Araki was good, but he didn't come cheap as time wore on and he took advantage of his leverage. This call alone will probably cut the overtime budget. Hopefully it was worth it. Is everything ready? Botan asked Toshio, who nodded. Yes sir, the paper is in the cell block with the vigilante. Sei is watching him. Good, Botan muttered, rubbing tired eyes as he glanced at the 1 clock on his desk. Araki was due any second, but the old cop had a far more pressing question enter his mind. And how was he, the vigilante? Kid didn't even look at us when we brought the paper and pens in. He's just sitting on his bed. He didn't even ask why. Toshio shook his head, not a peep came out. Not like we can understand him. And vice versa. Botan tried in vain to keep the scowl off his face. Peter was getting more despondent by the minute. Chief, he's here, came Hanazawa from behind the door. Toshio actually bristled. Botan didn't blame him. Did he ask for his clearance? It was the first thing he asked. Botan sighed. At least he hadn't changed. The chief made his way out of his office, and not even 2 steps out did a voice call. Fukuda. The chief kept up a stone face even as Toshio started fuming next to him. Araki Hayu was taller than most would expect him to be for someone of his age. Long, scraggly, aging white hair draped his face and framed an old coat that has been worn for many a year. He walked with a limp in his right leg, the telltale tapping of his cane as he walked towards the 2 policemen as a man with an agenda to keep. He also carried a briefcase in his free hand. Hayu-sensei, thank you for calm. Spare me the pleasantries. Hayu interrupted with a snarl. The sun is setting. The train was packed full of damn annoying brats gushing over some punk's explosive quirk, and my muse is thirsty. Where is the boy? In detention, came Toshio's curt reply. We were making preparations for you and... The old artist's eyes glinted with distaste as he finally realized that the other cop was there. His eye wandered to his badge and he let out a smirk. Ah, young Fujiwara-chan, still a lieutenant I see. Peaked early I assume. Toshio's eye twitched and Botan pinched the bridge of his nose. And you're not topping the charts anymore, old man. Hayu scoffed. Unlike you, my work doesn't just fall into my lap. Gentlemen, remember why we're here? Botan interrupted, cutting off any more arguing. Hayu-sensei, if you could follow me. The old man rolled his eyes. I remember where detention is. My memory hasn't gone to dust just yet. Unfortunately, Toshio grumbled. Said grumbling was silenced with a single glare from the chief. Despite being the senior officers, the two of them had to subject themselves to the looks of the younger staff as a civilian. Albeit a retired detective, walked through the station like he owned the place. Hayu had a laser focus that Botan hadn't seen in a long time. He's clearly bought into the description of what he told him. Something going on? Asked Mount Lady as she was depositing her tray and noticed Botan walk with his group back into the detention area. We're gonna have an interview with Parker. Toshio replied. Araki here is gonna make it easier on us and use his quirk to read his mind. Araki, mind wait, Araki Hayu, the dream drawer. I don't draw dreams. Hayu hissed. I make sketches of memories. He grumbled. And now I'm gonna have an audience, so you all better zip it when I get to work. He began to limp with a faster pace. He's grumpier than I imagined. Mount Lady mumbled. Trust me, he can be worse. Toshio added as they walked into the doors. This better be worth my time, or I'm billing you double, Fukuda. The old man growled as they made their way through the cell ward. Sei greeted them with a salute as Parker was still in bed before turning to face them. This him? Hayu asked. Botan nodded and Hayu frowned. Parker was sitting on his bed like Toshio had said, and he was in the fetal position before he noticed the group. Mount Lady stood out of the way, leaning against the wall, and out of sight from Parker as not to disturb the bitter old man. Next to the invisible wall, the stack of paper and a collection of pens on the table with a stool were waiting. The older man inspected Peter like how one would view an insect with a microscope. He doesn't look like much at a glance. Weren't you the one to tell me not to judge appearances? Botan asked. You think I'm stupid? Of course I know that, fool. Hayu muttered. There may be more to this foreign brat. Heard some mutterings from the younger generation over their phones over some incident this morning. Botan snapped his fingers at Sei as the mime dropped the invisible wall. The mangaka limped inside with his case, pulling the table close to the stool by the bed as Peter sat up, looking worried. Mr. Parker, Botan said in English. What's going on? Who is this old guy here? Peter asked in concern, seeing the scary-looking old man give him a frown as he. This man here is Hayu Araki. He's going to put things into perspective for us and give us an understanding of what is going on. Just let him touch your head, relax, and we'll have an interview. Peter was looking back and forth between him and the mangaka as he got his papers in order by his right. Hayu was getting impatient. Botan, did you find them? Peter asked, voice dry. Did you find anything? He kept a stone face. He didn't need to know. Botan didn't become a cop to crush a child's hope, at least. Not yet. We're still waiting for results from the US Embassy. Once we do, you'll be the first to know. I promise. He saw Peter nod into his knees. All right. I know in America that I usually need a lawyer for these things, and I guess I don't have that here in Japan. I can assure you, we just want perspective, then we can interview you and get in touch with the contacts you sent us. Once we have a clearer picture, Mr. Parker, we can sign some paperwork, hand you a warning, and send you off on your way. Botan assured in a soft voice. He felt sick telling him this. Peter shuffled to the edge of his bed and chuckled without a hint of mirth. So I just relax. Yes, just lie down on your back. Head closest to Hayu-sensei here and close your eyes. Another nod, the action looking more robotic every second. Peter lied down on his back, looking up at the frowning old man as he got his pens and papers ready. He's ready, Hayu-sensei. About time. Hayu scoffed. Just breathe in and out, relax, Mr. Parker. Botan assured in English. This here, like, gonna read my mind? Peter inquired. I mean, I saw a wood guy and some giant lady and you mentioned how people can have superpowers. So, just avoid any parts of me on a computer. Late at night, you know. He shrugged. Not, check on those. Botan let out a deep exhale through his nose as he heard a female snigger. Of course, teenagers. Who was that? Peter asked, hearing Mount Lady's stifled laugh. No one. What now? Hayu asked. What did he say? He said he's ready. Botan replied in Japanese. Now relax. We're starting. Peter nodded and closed his eyes. The old man placed his palm on Peter's head as if he was checking for a fever, and Toshio swore he saw Hayu's eyes glow. Then he drew. Hayu's pen was a blur across the paper, and Sei's mouth dropped. Mount Lady came out behind the wall and saw the pen fly across the paper as Toshio removed the first page and slid the next one under it, And Hayu went about lightning fast. That speed has to be his quirk, right? She asked. No, pure skill and technique, refined over years and his distaste for editors. Botan answered, amazed as Sei began to collect the sketches the mangaka was drawing at a speed no human being can do, and of such high quality for that matter as well. The first page was of a younger Peter Parker standing next to a happy couple over a birthday cake. Next, Peter was looking up to a man in a suit of armor. The suit had so much detail, every shine and every plate shown in all its magnificence. A side effect of Araki Hayu's quirk, Muse memory. The more cherished the memory, the greater the detail. A scrapped robot laid shattered at the boy's feet, and in the distance a spinning sign said Stark Expo. That name again. Stark. The final detail was a speech bubble over the Iron Man's head. Nice work. So that's Iron Man. The next pages of pictures flashed by, but in equal if not greater detail. Peter, older now, laughing with a chubby boy while they worked on some kind of toy set. A strange spider biting a hand. The sight of a coffin being lowered into the ground. Benjamin Parker painted brightly on the tombstone. The sight of a weeping woman to the side and a mass of mourners all around. Peter looking at a cheap imitation of the suit he now wore, made of stuff made at home like a hoodie and some store-bought items, creating some tub filled with a white substance, fighting some street-level thugs. He really is experienced after all. Meeting a middle-aged man with a small beard and mustache, sitting with him on the bed. This was Tony Stark. Another memory flashed by. Peter, in a better suit, standing next to several heroes. The red and yellowed steel hero from before with an individual in jet black feline-esque body armor, and a black and steel armored hero staring down an equally diverse set of opponents, including a blue armored man with a shield, a man with a metal arm, a man who can fly, and some red costumed giant, holding together a torn in half fairy by his webbing. Speaking in that man again. Tony Stark on a high rise, and very stern and serious was he, fighting against a black and green villain with metal wings in the sky. Mr. Toombs was his name. Seeing a girl walk off with a sad look in her eye. Meeting a bored girl who was amusing, but fascinating nonetheless. Looking up at a flying circular ship hovering over New York. Fighting villains. One a monstrous brute with a hammer, the other slender and using telekinesis. Flying out beyond the atmosphere, seeing the darkness of space and falling, before landing on the alien ship, saving a red-caped individual with scars on his hands. Tony Stark, the Iron Man, looking like a king and knighting him. You're an Avenger now, said the text bubble, being held at gunpoint by a man with weapons beyond anything Botan had ever seen. Seeing people with unique features such as dark skin with red tattoos, or glowing antennae with big black eyes, with the specter of some alien creature with a mouth razor-sharp teeth coming out of its mouth looming behind her. A different world, of ruined skyscrapers, satellites, and sinkholes. He can hear Hayu toss pens aside as he drew them dry of ink, grabbing new ones and sketching at light speed, his eyes glowing but laser-focused. A bald giant of a man with a single gauntlet, holding him by the throat. Little insect, was the text bubble, holding down that giant before a simply dressed man hit the giant in the face with his unique weapon. Fury and despair written on both his, Tony's, and even the giant's faces. Some meteor shower, putting people on web lines and flying through the debris as hell rained down around him. Botan's mouth was agape. The men and woman turning to dust. Peter, holding the man that gave him his suit, as Tony Stark was crying. The despair written all over him with the bubbles "it's going to be alright" above him as the world dissolved around him. And then, a pitch-black page, followed by the skyline of Musutafu, with the sight of that very same shark giant villain in the background. Chief, Toshio asked, seeing Botan go through the fast-paced sketches, all detailed with ink and not needing a redraft. Perfect detail. What the hell, Hayu-sensei? What is the meaning of this? He asked, as the old man dropped the last of his many pens as he leaned back, panting and sweating as his right hand was trembling from the heavy usage. Hayu looked over at him, looking exhausted as a man of his age should be, yet he began to laugh, a wide grin on his face. What is this? What is this? Hayu ruffled Peter's head, making the boy open his eyes in confusion at the act. This is a gold mine. This, he grabbed the papers in Botan's hands, going through them and inspecting them. My word, so much material. At last, something new and fresh. My muse. Oh yes, at long last, I can feel them churning in my head, haha. Hayu giddily exclaimed. Toshio and Botan eyed Hayu as if he just grew an additional head. Did something happen? Mount Lady asked incredulously. Something incredible indeed, young miss. This will be fine notes and material for my next manga. He turned towards Botan. Well, you didn't let me down, Fukuda. God, I feel like a new man. I need to take these home. We need them for the case, you old twit. Toshio barked. Oh, relax, Fujiwara-chan. Hayu rolled his eyes. I'm just going to scan copies. He patted the younger man on the chest, Toshio pucking his face. You need to live a little, stop being so serious. He turned back towards Botan. Your account will be charged when I noti. Save it, Fukuda. You don't have to bill me. The scans of these, he held all the sketches up in his right hand, is more than enough payment. He let out a deep and relieved sigh before he looked back at Peter, who was as confused as anyone. Fukuda, Hayu coughed in his throat, taking his cane and walking up to him as he began to whisper to him. This boy here, Peter Benjamin Parker, is innocent of anything and everything, he stated with a solemn look in his eyes. The only thing this boy is guilty of is ignorance of the laws of our world, and that is no crime. Our world. Botan raised a quirked eyebrow. Hayu nodded. You won't believe this. This boy comes from a world where most of the population is quirkless. Only a handful of individuals. He reached into his folder, grabbing out select pages. The standing in line and facing the shield man and red giant. The aliens, the wizard, the black-green winged villain, have abilities that can be called such, but even then they are quirkless, aside from a few. What are you talking about? You're saying Parker is from another world. Another Earth, but not ours. Another dimension perhaps, or a time, I do not know. What is certain, he was not born on this Earth, this plane of existence. He came from another, and this monster. Hayu held out a page of the sneering, growling monster of a man with the unique gauntlet, saying little insect at the reader, is to blame. And he did such damage, so much so, I was able to glimpse at death for the first time. Botan was agog. Hayu may be a grouch, a curmudgeon, unpleasant, irritable, but a liar he was not. He felt a pit form in his gut. What else about this world? What his world lacks in quirks, makes up in technology. The stuff there is only the advancements our society, no, our entire world can dream of. It's like magic, and the existence of, Mr. Fukuda, Peter asked, cutting into their conversation. Hayu would have barked if it were anyone else, but he kept his silence. Yes, Mr. Parker, Botan asked. This boy, the suit, his lack of knowledge, all of it, combined with the sketches Hayu has made. Could it be true? It could just be amnesia, or some villain with a gauntlet like that, but even when he was a young rookie and met Hayu in his younger days, he's never seen Hayu manage to get the image of death in his drawings. That pure pitch black page that took up 2 whole pens. The void, nothingness. So, there was no afterlife. And that frightened him to the core. Peter had died. A young innocent teenage boy, wanting to do the right thing, has died. And he came back to life. Botan did everything in his power to keep a straight face. Can I get something to eat? Oh yes, of course. Botan smiled for the first time, forced as it was. What would you like? Me and Hayu-sensei here are almost finished. Then we can get you something to eat, and then we can have our interview. Anything really, I guess. He died, Fukuda. Hayu whispered. The alien titan in my drawings, Thanos, murdered him somehow. Yet he wakes up in our world and rushes to save others without caring of his own well-being. The old man gained Botan's gaze. He's a hero through and through. He deserves better than some cafeteria slop if you ask me. Botan took a deep breath, taking the old mangaka's counsel. Tell you what, do you have any favorite food at all? He asked. Peter raised an eyebrow. My favorite? Well, usually cherry pie made by my aunt, but his face fell. I can go for some pizza. Fujiwara-chan. Hayu barked. Get him some pizza. I picked up pizza at the end there, he said in Japanese. What? Why do I have to do it? Favorite topping? Botan inquired, ignoring the bickering between the two. Just pepperoni is fine, Peter replied, voice soft. When will we get word from the embassy? When we get it, you'll be the first to know. Botan walked towards Peter, putting his hand on his shoulder and giving him a reaffirming squeeze. I promise. He looked back at Toshio and snapped his fingers. Toshio-kun. Pepperoni pizza. Just go to the pizzeria across the street and bill it to the station. Go, and give Hana's. I'll give the sketches to Hanazawa-san for her to scan. Hayu said. Then I'll take the originals and be on my way. He patted the police chief on the shoulder. You did good today, Fukuda. When I finish my pilot, I'll make a character named after you, and drinks on me. He had a wide, splitting smile on his face. Botan hasn't seen Hayu this overjoyed in years, yet was solemn regarding the details about Parker. Toshio sighed. TCH. And he walked off out of the ward. Botan offered a small smile. I'll be expecting that. And thank you so much for coming. He bowed lightly. We are truly grateful, Hayu-sensei. Save it, I'm the one who should be thanking you. Hayu beamed as he grabbed his cane and began limping off, walking past a confused and bewildered Mount Lady, who had remained silent and out of Peter's sight. What was that about? She asked. This case just got a lot more fascinating. And who is that? That voice sounds familiar, asked Peter, standing up from his bed. Say made his hand gestures, and the invisible wall came back up once again. He asking for me, Mount Lady whispered, walking on out as Peter's eyes rose up. You're the giant lady I slung into. The blonde superheroine smirked. That is Mount Lady to you, young man, she declared in English before turning to Botan. You look like you could take 5. Let me have a talk with the kid. I appreciate it. Kimihito-kun, stand watch. Say saluted as Botan left the pro to talk with the vigilante. He can hear Hayu giggling like a kid in a candy store as his papers got scanned. He saw Toshio outside walking down the sidewalk. He was here to give a simple warning to a foreign kid and send him back to the States. That was what he had planned a half hour ago. He never would have imagined that this would happen. Aliens, quirkless worlds, technology that is like quirks, literal death, alternate dimensions. It was too much to take in. Hayu's sketches never lie. The man would never compromise his integrity for some wild fantasy. The sketches combined with Parno, Peter's reaction, were starting to connect. Botan let out a sigh. He promised he would quit. His wife practically forced him to. When he stepped outside in the crisp air, he reached into his pocket and grabbed a cigarette, lighting it and taking a drag. Because damn it, he needs the buzz right now. Just what the fuck did I myself get into? Alrighty then, you called, sitting down on the stool, which has been taken behind the invisible wall. Say's eyebrow quirked up with her arrival. In front of her, Peter shifted on his bed. The poor boy was looking down at the floor before it rose up, unchanging. Going by the look of his eyes, his mind was not thinking about her or anything else. Just the uneasy anxiety of wanting an answer. He bit his lower lip a little as he finally noticed her. The act made the heroine smirk a little at being acknowledged. So, you prodded. Gotta get the kid talking. That's always the best way to help someone out. A little talk went a long way. After all Might was laughing and talking non-stop for a reason, saying how everything will be alright by his presence alone. Peter's cheeks flushed and he looked away. Sorry for flying into your butt earlier. You blinked once, twice. Then she couldn't stop it. She threw a hand over her mouth, sniggering and suppressing her laughter. That's what he's embarrassed about. The act made Peter's eyes rise up as he rose his hands in surrender. I swear I didn't mean it. I was aiming for Shamu. He thought the villain was a whale. You couldn't take it. She began to guffaw, head on in her arms as she hit the table with a balled fist, her muffled laughter sounding out the room. This Parker was a riot. Oh boy, you panted while rubbing her eyes. I needed a good laugh. Ooh, you're welcome. Peter offered. I am actually. You said, you and Shinji really made things easy for me today. I am Mount Lady by the way. Peter's eyebrow went up a notch. Your superhero name is Mount Lady. And who is Shinji? You then snapped her fingers. Oh, right, Kamui Woods. The eyebrow only went up and you mentally slapped herself. This kid was American. Of course he didn't know any of the local heroes. You remember the wood guy that was trying to tie up PFFT? She smirked. Shamu. She tried to be serious, but for the life of her it couldn't come out. Peter's eyes shot open. Oh, the wood arm guy. Yeah, that guy. You smiled. He was really annoyed I kept my eye on the prize. You mean defeating Shamu? The blonde nodded. Yep. Here in Japan, a professional hero's salary is dependent on how many villains we catch, how much we help everyone with our quirks, rescue others or use said quirks for general works and more, depending on your certification. Peter nodded, soaking up the info like a sponge. And yours, your quirk, is getting bigger, like Gulliver, or like in that Honey I Blew Up the Kid movie. He guessed. I mean, given your hero name it makes sense. I have never heard of a Gulliver or that movie unless it is some American B-movie, but you are correct. My quirk is gigantification. You clarified. I can go from my height to 63 meters tall. Pretty amazing, right? The blonde beamed, eyes closed as the rookie hero preened. Peter shrugged. It's not the first time I've seen it. Hugh's smile dropped from her face, eyebrows tilted in confusion. Really? Seriously? Yeah. And the giant guy I fought against once, not Shamu but another guy. He could go smaller too, like ant-sized. Oh, that is so unfair. Someone can change their size at will. You huffed, crossing her arms. Well, not all of us can have a candy bag of powers. She blinked and looked him over, making Peter scoot back a little. Speaking of that, what is your quirk? Is it spitting out web from your wrists? Like converting your bloodstream into webbing? Peter blinked and then shook his head. No, my web shooters are just a part of my suit. Part of the suit. Huh, who made them? Peter scratched the back of his head sheepishly. I did. You did. You exclaimed. In my garage originally, he added. With some help they were improved of course. By Mr. Stark. he said, looking a bit downcast, but the superhero didn't care about that bit. Peter made those things. According to the report, those webs were strong enough to hold up a falling power line. What are those things made out of? How did he make the intricacies of a projectile shooter of a material strong enough to hold power lines and prevent bolt cutters from cutting through them? They needed blow torches for the silk. This kid is getting stranger by the minute. In your garage originally before some Stark guy tuned them up, huh? Cool. So is it your acrobatics? Is that it? I don't really know. Now it was Yu's turn to raise an eyebrow. Her mask didn't help, but Peter got the message. I mean, I'm a lot stronger and I'm flexible and there's this feeling I get when something's about to hit me and helps me react. There's that. Yu hummed, puffing her cheeks and furrowing her brow in thought. That was an interesting set of powers. What kind of combination lead to what he had? Attribute quirks maybe. Yu grumbled. She knew she should have paid more attention to quirk applications class. So what? Peter said, snapping Yu out of her thoughts. So, she prodded with a tilt of her head. Your English is really good. Yu nodded and her smile grew to split her face in two. English was one of the subjects she aced back in UA. Thanks in no part to her American grandpa she talked with back when she attended the prestigious academy. Thanks. Japanese may be my natural tongue, but English I have gotten quite affluent with. Do you know any other languages? She asked. I know some Spanish. Did you ever want to go to Spain? No, I haven't been out of the States until. He trailed off, his shoulders sagging as he looked off, thinking of something else, and Yu frowned despite herself. The kid, he was going so well too, and now she just had to ring it back around to him sulking over whatever it is he's sulking about. None of that. What kind of hero would she be if she couldn't help a poor hormonal teenager smile? Can you lower it? She asked, looking at Kimihito. The mime nodded, using his gestures to lower the invisible wall. When she made a gesture to knock, feeling nothing, she walked around the table and stood in front of the teen. Hey, she said as gently as she could, standing up and putting a hand on Peter's shoulder. Don't let it get to you. You'll just get a warning and be on your way once your parents are here. And Peter barked out a laugh so devoid of humor it made Yu's heart ache. He didn't meet her eyes, looking to the ground. Yeah, why should I just broke the law? He snarked, half angry at being talked down to and half sad due to something else. And Mount Lady felt nostalgic looking at Peter, because it felt like looking at herself once upon a time. Yeah, you did. You admitted. But who doesn't? People speed over the limit in their cars every day. Who cares if you broke the law? Everyone once in their life breaks that quirk law. I know I did. Kamui Woods, my colleague, did once. We all do. Wouldn't the police care? Peter offered. PSSHT. You waved it off. Don't worry about them. Just think about all the people you helped me save. Peter looked up, and Yu smiled at him, giving him her best thumbs up. You went in there to help. That makes you a hero in my book. The boy was silent, but he offered a small smile of appreciation. Thanks, he muttered, taking a deep breath. Just wait a little longer. You'll be swinging through the city saving everyone in no time. You'll probably be sent back home to America, but I know you'll be a great hero someday. Yu said with praise. Before Peter could reply, he was cut off as a voice in Japanese called from down the hall. Mount Lady-san. Yu and Peter looked down the hall where the mousy intern ran towards them. Unregistered quirk user is wreaking havoc downtown. Deathjaw is on the scene, but there's a hostage. Where? Yu asked in Japanese. Downtown, in front of the station. I'll be right there, Mount Lady nodded, walking out of the cell. Wait, what's going on? He asked. Peter started to get up, but Yu held a finger. Say noticed the movement and moved his hands fast, erecting the invisible wall. You stay here. She spoke in English again. Hostage situation with a villain. Gotta go handle it. Let me. I said that you had to wait. Yu interrupted with more serious tone. You don't have your license and you're still waiting for a call. Just let the pros handle things for now. Peter slumped back on his bed, and Yu felt like she knew what it was like to kick a puppy. I'll see you off before you head out. She promised. I'll be back. Promise. With that, she took off, dodging officers on her way out of the station. Peter saw her leave, and he sat on the bed, breathing hard as he gripped his interlocked hands hard. Sei stood at attention by the entrance to the cell, as usual. To think someone was being held hostage. Someone was in trouble. He looked over at Sei, who was standing hands behind his back. Hey you, Mr. Mime, he asked, waving his hand. The mime noticed him, eyes focused. So, do you have a phone? The mime quirked an eyebrow. I'm not gonna take it. You have the wall cutting this table in half, right? So I can just Peter sat on the stool, pulling it up to the table and sitting down. He knocked on the invisible wall. I just wanna get a clue on the hostage situation. Stream the news. Or can you even understand what I'm saying? The mime shook his head. Peter sighed, biting his lower lip and standing up and getting back on the bed. He lied down, looking up at the ceiling and breathing in and out. Damn, he muttered under his breath. There was someone in trouble, and he's stuck in this stupid cell. And he cannot act. He could break his way out. But Mr. Fukuda and Mount Lady were so nice and told him of the laws. He had already broke one law today, even if out of ignorance. And he got some old man to read his mind or something. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes and trying to force himself to take a nap. This whole spectacle has to be some dream. And the contacts should be coming in by now. One of the officers arrived back with some pizza, so that was a welcome reprieve. Peter managed to eat the whole pie, skipping on breakfast and his body's physiology demanding high amounts of calories before going back to the bunk. The grouchy officer who was with the mime left without a word, or even responding him, only saying "Haruisu pizza." It was over an hour until Peter heard footsteps in the detention area, making him open his eyes. He must have drifted off into a nap. He sat up, seeing Fukuda Botan walk in with a briefcase. "Any word?" he asked, getting to his feet. "Apologies for the hold-up, Mr. Parker," Botan said as he sat in the chair across from Peter as the boy did the same. "We handled the hostage situation and the villain is being detained." At that word, Peter saw that older officer who gave him the pizza walk behind him down the hallway. "What's with the milk gallon full of sludge?" "Anyways," he said, grabbing out a notepad and pen. "I was hoping we can begin our interview." "What's the word?" "On my contacts." "The embassy?" Peter asked. "Did you get Tony Stark or me Parker on the line?" he asked in rapid fire, eyes wide and full of hope, desperate to latch onto anything. Mr. Fukuda frowned, reaching into the briefcase as he looked at Kimihito and nodded. The mime did some gestures and looked like he was lifting something. The police chief slid some papers across the table to Peter. "When I got back from the situation, I made a call to the embassy to double-check. Triple-check." He spoke, tone sullen as Peter looked over the results, seeing the insignia of the United States and spotting the word embassy within the insignia. Me Parker, residence, Queens, New York. Married to Benjamin Parker. No results found in Japan or United States. Edward Ned Leeds, residence, Queens, New York. Son of Leonard and Belle Leeds. No results found in Japan or United States. Michelle M.J. Jones, residence, Queens, New York. Daughter of Brock and Mary Jones. No results found in Japan or United States. Anthony Tony Stark, residence, Malibu, California and Manhattan, New York. Founder of Stark Industries and the Avengers. Superhero, Iron Man. No results found in Japan or United States. No, no, just no, 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 no. "No, no," Peter muttered, gripping the paper, looking behind the back to see if this was a joke. This, Mr. Parker, no," he roared, grabbing the chair he was sitting on and throwing it to the wall, hard and making it crash. "Fuck." He brought his arms down on the bed with a yell, crunching it in two as he let out a sob. He heard the clicking of guns and he felt a tingling down his spine and turned. He saw the mime being wide-eyed and nervous, gun raised while Botan was quiet, eyes sad and sympathetic. The chief didn't even move. "I died. I fucking died. I fucking died. It was real, oh God," Peter sobbed, coughing and letting out gasps as he began to weep. He slouched down, grabbing the sheets and muffling a massive roar. "Everyone, Mr. Stark, Aunt Me, Ned, MJ, even that asshat Flash Thompson, Happy, the Guardians, Doctor Strange, I'm dead. I fucking died there. Everyone," he uttered, feeling the lump in his throat as he continued to weep. He heard a foreign mutter, footsteps, and felt a hand on his shoulder. Peter turned around, ready to lash out, and saw the warm eyes of Mr. Fukuda kneeling down beside him. I am sorry for everything, Mr. Parker. I truly am." Peter was quiet, taking deep breaths. "Why, I dunno. Ew." He stammered over and over, the pit in his stomach still there. "Fucking." He hugged Mr. Fukuda hard. "Giant Chang," said a voice, the old pizza officer said, poking his head through the door. Peter didn't care, feeling Fukuda's hands on his shoulder. "Mr. Parker," Botan said softly, as Peter looked up, eyes red with tears as the older Japanese man put a hand on his head. We need to get our interview in. Then, we need to go from there." "But how?" Peter squeaked out, chin moving up and down as he closed his eyes, sobbing a little. "I don't know. I never have felt with a situation like this, but protocol is protocol, Mr. Parr." He paused, taking a deep breath. Peter bit his lip, closing his eyes and nodded. "Okay, fine." Peter felt lost, adrift. He didn't know what the hell he was going to do. Botan turned towards the chair and walked towards the other end and took his seat. Peter spotted the stool the old man, Araki his name was, he didn't remember, used and took it and placed it on his end of the table. "Sorry for ... the chair and bed." he whispered lightly, eyes glued to the steel table. It is all right. Most inmates tend to cause damage anyway. We have spares, Botan reassured. Now, I just want to know about you and correlate what Hayu-sensei gave us. Then we can proceed from there. Where am I going to go? Peter asked. The red-haired man ran his hand through his hair, taking a deep breath. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Is that the saying? He asked. Peter nodded. Okay then. He heard a pen being clicked. Do you want to start from the beginning? Sure. All right. He reached into the briefcase, grabbing a smartphone or some recording device and pressing something. Konoin tabu ajai mai bao kai wo mu de tashidamonod. Jing cha shu mataha fa lunai guan surusu batino shizang wo dui zang tashidamasu. When tai no rong iji hamarika rendiri, shidagatsu tekanoin tabiua ying yuda zing wer masu. He paused, turning towards Peter. Let us begin, Peter. Okay. What is your name? Peter Parker. How old are you? 16. Where is your place of birth and residence? Botan scribbled on the pen. Queens, New York City. Do you have any parents? Peter wanted to not answer, but he had to get through this. He was feeling numb. I used to. What happened to them? They died in a plane crash when I was very young, just barely a year old. I see. That is saddening. Who are your guardians then, in that case? Peter bit his lip. Aunt Me Parker. Do you have an uncle? Peter took a sharp inhale. He remembered the joy of Uncle Ben when celebrating his birthday, taking him out for bike rides, teaching how to make gadgets in the garage, and how he died, and he was buried. Yes, Uncle Ben. He passed away 2 years ago. I see. I am sorry. Me too. Peter muttered. What are you doing in Japan? Botan asked, and Peter looked up at him, silent. Mr. Parker, I will ask again. What are? I don't know why. I was dead. Or I think I was. You died. Botan asked rhetorically. How? It's a long story. Peter whispered, heart still aching over the revelation. Botan remained silent and nodded. It is fine. Tell me, however wild it is. Peter lifted his head up. If I told you I came from a world without quirks and there was only a few, very few, people with superpowers. With wizards and big powerful aliens and rocks that were formed from the Big Bang that can do crazy stuff. All caused by some giant purple alien muscle guy. Would you believe me? Peter was ready for the incredulous look again. But Botan was straight-faced, nodding as his eyes looked into his briefcase for a minute, and then back to Peter. I do. Now, tell me from the beginning. How did you come here to Japan? The brown-haired boy took a deep breath, biting his lip. I'll start from the beginning. How I became Spider-Man then. That should give you a clearer picture. Peter heard footsteps in the hallway lightly, but paid no mind. Tell me everything. And then he told him. All right. Botan nodded. That is enough. He turned towards the recorder, and he tapped on the button, ending the recording. Now then, this interview will be kept as evidence for your participation in the train station incident, and will be kept in the fullest of confidence. In addition, we must now handle your current situation. Botan elaborated. How? The brown-haired boy asked. I have no one. He smiled ruefully. No parents, no aunts and uncles, no Avengers, no Mr. Stark, no wizards or aliens. He lifted his hands with a shrug. I'm homeless. I'm just a refugee with no home to go to. Peter let out a sigh before it became a sob. I'm an orphan. Botan sighed. And you are right. But we could try to fix this. Peter's eyes looked up at him, daring him to seek a resolution. As a police chief, I know many connections that help assist the department with cases and with those who are up to no good. Your situation, Peter, is unlike anything I have ever encountered in my career, or anyone else have had. You came from another world, another dimension even, and I believe you given what Hayu-sensei told us. And with no one like you in this world, it means that the United States would be hard-pressed to accept you, even if you are American in citizenship. You have no birth certificate, no connections, no capital, nothing. Only your name, your word, and the clothes on your back. Then how? Peter yelled. How do you fix this then? He asked, crossing his arms and glaring at Botan. He knows he should not be angry with him, but damn it, he doesn't know what to do at this point. I know many connections, Peter. Botan's voice was solid and firm. He leaned forward. It wouldn't be too hard to ask for someone to forge you a visa. A visa? Peter asked. Like a Visa gift card? No. A visa is a document that states your intention on entering a foreign country and residing there for purposes. From there, you have options to possibly apply for membership and residency. The issue is, it would have to be Japanese, as I have no connections with American or British forgers. Peter bit his lip. Okay, so he would have to be here for what? So, the visa would be for me to do what? Is he going to school? The easiest way to acquire a visa without jumping through hundreds of loopholes is by applying to become a foreign transfer student. Botan stretched his arms. I know, my nephew went to America to become a foreign exchange student, so I have a clue on the process. So, apply for foreign visa, and use it to go to school. Okay, Peter furrowed his brow in thought. So, I go to school and then you become a hero. Peter perked up. Wait, what do you mean? Japan has the best hero schools in East Asia, rivaled only by the ones in Dubai and Jerusalem. With your suit's technology, your abilities, your skills and experience, you would be perfect in becoming a hero. Botan elaborated. And besides, you tried to intervene in the villain incident at the train station, after dying no less at the hands of this Thanos, he said, letting the name roll off the tongue. It was name meant to inspire intimidation. That much is true. You cared not for yourself, but for others, even if it didn't involve you. If that is not a hero, I don't know what is. Peter took in deep breaths, staring at Mr. Fukuda with appreciation as he bit his lip. So, this guy you know can get me a visa, and I have to go to school and become a hero. Yes, I can only get visas that can help you apply for schooling and for application for residency here in Japan. When you become an adult and graduate, you are welcome to apply for dual citizenship in America and seek a career here. But you must build a foundation first in this brave new world you have landed in, Peter, Botan said as he stowed his many pages of notes he had wrote down during the interview. Plus, we need to find you a guardian. The guardian, right. But who? How about me? Both men jumped in surprise. Peter more than Botan as the spandex-clad Mount Lady came out of her super awesome hiding spot. He definitely didn't see her behind the concrete and steel wall. You? Peter asked. The blonde tried not to pout too much. What's with that tone? Did he not believe her? Even the chief didn't look convinced. Forgive me, Mount Lady-san. I thank you for your help in the apprehension of the sludge villain, Botan said in Japanese. But this matter is probably best left to foster services. You felt her eye twitch as she scoffed. Oh yes, foster care. They'll do their level best to put Peter with the best guardians that he could get. Ones that knew of his situation, that knew of his heroic spirit, who knew that he needed to be with someone that actually knew what he was dealing with and not some made-up cockamamie cover-up story. Yes, foster care would be absolutely perfect for him. Peter needs to be anywhere but foster care. Oh, don't be such a sourpuss, you waved off. I'm not a sourpuss, this is a serious matter. Botan narrowed his eyes. The paperwork alone is going to be monstrous, even with using less than legal avenues to get him settled and coming up with a convincing background for him on why an American boy with no parents or other relatives or contacts is being placed in a Japanese foster care system. We can't just dump him to the Americans. They'll deny him as he isn't a citizen and doesn't know his situation. And just throwing him to foster homes won't help him any good at all. He was ready to go out there and help handle the sludge guy's situation with me at a drop of a hat, not even batting an eye. You placed a hand on her chest. If that ain't heroism coursing through his veins, I don't know what is. And going to some shanty foster home is going to do him no good. She can speak to experience on that front. What are you guys talking about? Peter asked curiously in English, confused as to why the adults were arguing in Japanese, hiding something from him in all likelihood. You turned around and gave a thumbs up. We're just sorting out your room. You know, boring adult stuff. Botan rolled his eyes and exhaled through his nose hard. The brown-haired wall crawler blinked and glanced at Officer Kimihito, who shrugged. Oh, okay. Awesome. You turned on the chief after reassuring the teen. Leave him with me. I can take care of him. The red-haired man looked back to Peter, then to you, who stood with her hands on her hips. His story, his past, what Mount Lady had just said combined with his resume. The boy was a hero through and through, even in defiance of the rules. He never grew up in foster care. He doesn't know what it's like. Botan pinched the bridge of his nose and ran his hand over his face, staring down the shorter blonde-haired superhero. Do you really think you can take care of a teenage boy and prepping him for hero school while being a pro? Botan asked. Seriously, can you accept that commitment? Feeding him? Clothing him? He asked in Japanese, terse. And you realized why Botan has been a police chief for all these years given his serious tone. The rational part of her brain was kicking her heart. What on earth was she thinking? She had no clue how to be a guardian. But it couldn't be too hard. Be kind, understanding, supportive, all that good stuff and more. It's not like raising a baby with diapers and constant crying or anything. Yet she will need to do that. Give Peter a roof over his head, food, clothes, necessities, all while being a full-time pro. This was going to be a challenge, but she couldn't find the strength to take it back. She was a woman of her word. She has known Peter for all of one day. But damn it, he needed her. If she walked out of this station without him by her side, she'd never live it down. She could walk on the red carpet as the #1 hero, not just in Japan but globally, and it would feel hollow, being unable to save that one person when she was in a position to. Because at the end of the day, she couldn't stop being selfish long enough to help a confused, terrified teenager. Not when she was 1-2 once. So to the chief, she cracked a grin, a daredevil one. Big talk coming from a chief who's going to break the law to help him out. Botan blanched, then scoffed. I've got 20 years of seniority in this office and connections. You've got a few days and change under your belt. The superheroine rolled her eyes anyway. Tomato, tomato. It'll at least give him a place to stay for tonight. She paused, sneaking a glance at Peter, who waved nervously. And a wardrobe change. Can't go walking around in a costume after all. Botan's eyes darted between the heroine and Peter, the latter freezing under the mismatched gaze. Yu was honestly impressed at the intensity in the chief's eyes. He looked like a shogi player working 12 moves ahead. Every option, every failure. He closed his eyes and let out a big sigh. He snapped his fingers at Officer Say, and the mime dropped the barrier. You better treat him well, Botan muttered under his breath. Peter, he spoke in English. The teenager straightened at the sound of his name. You're free to go. He held up a hand before Peter could ask anything. All the paperwork will be handled on our end. But for now, Mount Lady here will be acting as your guardian until you can get settled. Can't exactly keep you here overnight and all. Your circumstances are unique after all. Peter stood there, agog at Yu, realizing what has happened. You would do that for me. We only just met and, of course, Yu responded in English, grinning ear to ear, eyes closed. It's what heroes do. All right then. Thank you for your cooperation, Peter, Botan said, stepping to the side, offering his hand. The brown-haired boy perked up and shook the police chief's hand firmly. The man bowed his head lightly in response. No, thanks for all your help, Peter replied. I don't know what I would do if I hadn't met you. He frowned and leaned towards Yu. You're supposed to bow in Japan, right? He whispered. Yu held back a snort and nodded. Peter grimaced, but nevertheless, the sweet boy did his best bow that he could give, much deeper than a normal person. One that Botan returned with a smile and a chuckle. Not so deep, but you're on the right track. And it's fine, I am only doing my job. And don't worry, Peter. Before you know it, he leaned in, a cheeky smirk on his face. I'll be telling my son that I knew the great hero Spider-Man before he even started. Peter lit up at the praise, letting out a laugh. The boy really seemed to look up to the officer as he hugged him. Botan froze up, blushing at the contact before settling his hand atop of his head. Peter backed off, his face just as red. Sorry, I don't know what came over me and you've had a trying experience. Botan put it as best as he could. A hug is not uncalled for. Come on. You tapped Peter's shoulder. It's getting late and we need to get you some clothes before the stores close. Peter paled as he looked down, apparently just now remembering that he had on his suit. Yeah, he said, only to blanch further. Oh yeah, let me take it off. Somehow, Peter tapped around the iron spider suit, standing back as the two adults looked at him curiously. Say knew his job was finished and gave the trio room as he left the detention area. Is something the matter? Botan asked with a quirked eyebrow. Yahayu, this is kinda weird, but this suit is a second suit and I don't know how to turn it off. Peter was running his hands over his body, looking around, much to the look of utter confusion from both Yu and the police chief. Where did Mr. Stark put an off button at? He finished running his hands over his chest and was patting and poking. Then it hit him. The suit hit him when he was running out of oxygen on the space donut in the back. His hands hit his shoulder blades as he began to search around. When his palm hit the spot between his shoulder blades, then it went up, hitting the nape of his neck. Something whirred and clicked. Botan's eyes rose up and Yu's mouth dropped as Peter felt sand move around, the nanites moving around up to Peter's head. He looked down, seeing his normal bright red and blue suit come back as he heard a clinking sound as a device fell. Using his reflexes, Peter caught it and held it up. It was some kind of device, like if a Fitbit watch but for around the neck, with some pad the size of a watch clock, with a bright light blue light emitting from it. Peter narrowed his eyes, seeing his thumbprint. So Mr. Stark attuned the suit to be able to only be accessed by him, with the nanites stored inside. An arc reactor powers the iron spider. Peter muttered under his breath, in awe. Well now, Botan muttered. I was not expecting this, but he shrugged. After today, I don't think anything surprises me anymore. Oh, I can keep this right. Peter held the device close to his chest. We're not going to take it. Botan shook his head. What your costume is won't leave this room. Whatever is stored in that thing is something we may not be able to understand. He eyed Peter's hands. I trust you'll keep it safe and out of the wrong hands. The teen nodded, clutching it tightly. I will. Well, that's all well and good, but Mount Lady pointed at his chest. Your other costume? Oh crap. I left my clothes behind at 7-Eleven. Peter muttered. I am only wearing my underwear under this. His hand went over his suit he got when he went to Germany, and he was investigating Mr. Toombs with Carr. Karen, Peter yelled, tapping his suit. Karen, can you hear me? Karen, you was caught off guard by the sudden desperation in the American's voice. Even you tilted her head. Who's Karen? Botan asked, as Peter's shoulders slumped. The suits. I forgot to bring her up during our talk. Botan rolled his eyes. I need to find her. I need to ... take this off. He bit his lip, looking at the duo. Sorry, it's fine. I'll lend you my coat. You can wear that. It's a big trench coat that's beige and on that coat rack near my office. Hopefully they can help. He shrugged. Peter perked up. I'll return it once I get clothing. I promise, he said seriously. Botan could see it in his eyes that Peter would follow through on his word. I'll hold you to that. The chief looked down at the blonde heroine. You two have to be places now. I need to sort paperwork and do my job. Sure thing. Don't worry about it. I know a great place to go shopping. You smirked, patting him on the shoulder. I'm a pro, so I can walk around in my costume and just say it's a patrol. Deathjaw is gonna file the report in for Sludge Dude anyway. Now let's go shopping. I can't wait to get you all the Gucci and Sova tire. You declared as Peter blanched, rolling his eyes. Gucci, he muttered, but it went unnoticed by the blonde as the two walked out of the detention center. Botan was alone, and he went back to his briefcase, looking through the pictures of Peter's past, and then back out to the fast-talking blonde and her younger ward. Those images of saving others time and again. His motivation, the sight of a dying man, his Uncle Ben in his arms, with the notable words in a thought bubble. The words Peter associates with his deceased uncle. No. Parent, those with great power bear the mantle of responsibility. Everything else has been to save others less stronger than him, to fight those who abuse their power, who commit evil. Botan smiled. Peter Parker. He looked at another photo, one of Peter looking at himself in the reflection of a skyscraper window, the backdrop of New York City behind him, in his blue and red with web design costume. Spider-Man, I will be expecting great things from you. He grinned, and he stowed the pictures. Time to get back to work. You wanted to cry. She wanted to be sick. She wanted to wail. Gucci and suave. That was all the rage these days. He was a teenager. A teenage boy, yeah, but he had to have something. His costume was so cool. How it can be so compact and small and form-fitting and sleek, and yet, how can his casual be so plain? The two of them had went straight Viper's Bite, Uwabami's personnel department store chain. Sure, the snake hero might take her modeling career way too seriously. The tramp had no taste and was so gaudy and bourgeois. But at least she kept some of her stores affordable for the common man and woman. Something about making everyone feel the best even if they couldn't look as good at her, was how she put it. He was going to show that flashy hag one of these days, even if her commercials, social media trends, and online magazine and website ads were making this easier, keeping Yu's new fans away. She will get that exposure and fame. One day she will oust that hussy. She will see. But, first things first, before she could stop that travesty that was the snake tramp, she had a crisis in front of her. Is that it? You asked, hoping beyond hope. No Dennison, Jean-Paul, Ronaldo, Maximilian. Peter's choice of speaking to him, in the height of fashion, was a simple beige t-shirt, red hoodie jacket, and normal blue jeans with the large trench coat he borrowed tucked into a bundle under his arm. How a boy with such an amazing suit settled for something like that? She had no clue. Peter blinked and looked down. Oh yeah, this is the cheapest set I could find. I'm not really a fan of that super expensive Richie stuff. Like, some stuff had a lot of zeros. You scrunched her face before it hit her. She bonked her head. Currency, she muttered in Japanese. Oh, don't worry about it, she said in Japanese. Here in Japan, $1 goes for about 100 yen. Peter blinked. Great, I'm right on budget then. What? That couldn't be more than 15 yen. You got this off the bargain bin. Peter flinched, and you immediately winced. I mean, money isn't an issue right now, Peter. Don't you wanna, well, look nice? Well, not now. You notched an eyebrow and Peter hefted his suit closer to his chest. I mean, you get paid by how many villains you catch. You just started out and you only got one villain. You couldn't hold back a groan. That's not how all heroes get paid. Villain catching is a bonus. I have a flat salary with potential for raises based on my performance, with arresting villains, saving civilians, and defeating criminals netting me bonuses. It's how it's like for all heroes, and even then some heroes don't handle criminals. Like some handle natural disasters or rescue or coast guard. It's not all villain-based. She let out a big sigh. You have no clue how to spoil yourself. Peter looked downcast. I'm just doing what I'm used to is all. Those words made the blonde regret her little tidbit. What he's used to. That pit was forming in her gut as she bit her lower lip. She heard the interview. Every time that Peter mentioned living with his aunt and uncle, he never once complained that they didn't have what they needed. How Uncle Ben worked as an electrician and Aunt Mee as a waitress. He made it seem like he grew up like every normal kid, only getting the odd supplies because his aunt didn't believe in spoiling him. But if $15 worth of a shopping spree is his idea of normal, you walked up and straightened the lended coat so it sat straighter on Peter's shoulders. A quick flip of his hair to the side gave her a sight worth grinning about. It looks perfect. Peter gave her a wry look, and you couldn't stop rolling her eyes, chuckling all the way through it. Come on, let's get those clothes and back to my apartment. I don't know about you, but I'm starving. We'll get you more clothes later, but this should help hold you over. You know, out of all the things that have happened today, finding a set of clothes his size had been a small victory. And it had nothing on what was happening right now. The superhero Mount Lady, or you as she wanted to be called, was taking him in as his guardian. At least for now. Someone who was a full-time superhero was taking him in after only knowing him for an hour at most. It was like Aunt Mee had come back, like she hadn't been away at all. Well, minus the boisterous enthusiasm and mild Japanese accent. This whole day has been like one bad dream, but a silver lining that wasn't there before has arrived. Yu's apartment was a lot closer to the train station than Peter would have thought. Not that he was complaining, it was also close to downtown and he knew that had its benefits. Here we are, Yu called, opening the door to her apartment. Peter walked in and was immediately beset with a familiar space. A small living room with a cheap sofa in front of a TV connected to the kitchen. A single window patio giving a view of the great city. Though, that's where the familiarity stopped. The floor around the couch was littered with used chip bags, and a set of clothes had been haphazardly thrown on the couch. Dishes were nearly bursting out of the sink, and the one room that he could see had a bed that looked like it hadn't been made in its entire life. And the room smelt musty. Despite the chaos that Mee would ground Peter for, Yu beamed. Welcome to our tiny corner of heaven. Why yeah, it's amazing, homie, perfect. Yu supplied. Messy was the first word that came to mind, but one look from Yu threw that thought right out the window. Yeah, Yu beamed. Now, food. She marched to the kitchen like she was on a mission from God. She threw open the fridge door and even from the doorway Peter could hear the groan. Still nothing good. Sorry Peter, supper's gonna have to wait. What's wrong? He asked. I forgot to get groceries with the craziness of the day. I've only got enough for a Thai dish. Not much of a housewarming me. That's great. You leaned back behind the fridge door to get a better look at him as he put the bundle of clothes on the sofa. They stopped by the MPD to give Mr. Fukuda his coat back, but he was busy doing work in his office, so they didn't stop by to see him. Regardless, Peter fulfilled his promise. Really? Yeah, I like Thai. You frowned but relented with a shrug. All right, wash some dishes while I get to work. There should be some soap under the sink. Got it. Let me get changed first. Peter went into the bathroom and stripped out of the suit and looked at it, realizing the mask wasn't there. Where? Oh yeah, Space Donut. He couldn't breathe. Was Karen in there? Or was she? In the chest area. He ran his hand over the spider insignia. His symbol. Where are you? Peter muttered, making it a promise to inspect the suit whenever he could to try and get in touch with her. But, going by her apartment, and due to his lack of connections and of the local tongue, Peter won't be getting anywhere. He patted the symbol as he finished stripping and folding his suit, knowing he would have to wash it and changed into his new clothes. He walked out, seeing Yu struggle to clean up the kitchen. She definitely was not used to eating in, it seems, or cooking for herself. His hands immediately went to work with the familiar motions of scrubbing dishes. Soon, the entire apartment had the aroma of rice and vegetables. Yu didn't stop frowning at her work, but Peter didn't mind. So, Peter looked up at her as he finished loading the dishwasher and was running it. He can understand basic appliances easily enough. What will I do? Well, Yu mused as she looked at the directions, muttering in Japanese on how to cook pad thai. First, I'm gonna have to sign paperwork to have you become my legal ward, once Fukuda gets you that forged visa. Then, with our relationship set, she moved the rice pan a little. You'll have to apply to go to a school. If my memory is right, she put an index finger to her lip. You'll need to sign up for a foreign exchange class. It's a class that brings in foreign students and teaches them Japanese and other subjects to help them get you acclimated. Then, she snapped her fingers, looking at the brown-haired boy with a grin. "We get you into UA." Peter was following along, making notes in his head as he began to take some clean spray, a wet sponge and hot water to the countertops, going around and cleaning as he looked back at the older and still dressed in her costume blonde. "UA, the best hero academy in Japan, if not all East Asia," Mount Lady said with pride. "I graduated there a couple of years ago from the hero department they have. In fact, some people say it's the best in the world, outside of maybe the Manton Institute of Heroes in Los Angeles and Xavier Private Charter School in Boston." She scrunched her face. The Übermenschschule in Berlin can be on par, where London's King's Cross Call. I get it, UA is the top hero school in Japan. Got it, Peter surmised, taking some paper towels to dry off. He applied some elbow grease to get some serious stains off. "How will I get in? Will you help?" Peter began to make a mental checklist in his mind. Find a way to talk to Karen. Adjust and learn Japanese. Pray you as his sole guardian. And go to this UA. To become a hero, apparently. You'll get an easy and thanks to me being an alumni, you stated as she flipped the stir-fry and rice. But due to, well, me being just a simple student who graduated and not some all-popular hero with loads of money, I don't think you'll get in on recommendations, meaning you'll have to take the entrance exam to enter UA Academy. The superheroine turned down the heat. Am I doing this right? I dunno. Anyways, my word, will you get the door open? It's up to you, however, to get an education so you can be eligible for an application. So when we get you into that foreign exchange course, you will pass and get your credentials. The sun was setting behind the blinds as Peter looked up at the taller blonde, whose ruby red eyes were soft. And then, elsewhere, a skeletal man with glowing sapphire orbs stared at a young green-haired boy, crying tears of gratitude with his hand to his heart, down the street with the backdrop of an orange sky and a setting sun. And they spoke the same words. To the ones who will wield great power. To the ones who will one day inherit the mantle of responsibility. The mantle of the strongest heroes. You can become a hero. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.